I don't necessarily love excuses. I'm not really going to use them. We got our butts kicked tonight, and that's what it is. It doesn't matter if we play a
The Las
back to the.
Vegas Aces came into Gainbridge Fieldhouse in Indianapolis, absolutely expecting a highly publicized, nationally televised coronation, fully anticipating that they would easily impose their championship will on a young, inexperienced team and remind the entire basketball world exactly who still runs the WNBA. But instead, they got completely and unequivocally run off the floor by a truly historic, monumental Caitlin Clark performance, and the post-game press conference that followed their humiliating defeat was pure, unadulterated, cinematic comedy of the highest order. Aja Wilson and head coach Becky Hammon took to the podium with dark clouds hanging over their heads and proceeded to blame the whistle, the rigorous travel schedule, the alleged lack of foul calls, and the aggressive physical nature of the game, essentially blaming absolutely everything under the sun except the giant, glaring, mathematically undeniable numbers illuminated on the scoreboard hanging directly above center court. Today, we are bringing out the receipts in full force, lining up every single desperate excuse the defending back-to-back champions made, and comparing them directly against the actual, uneditable game tape and the merciless, objective box score that proves exactly what happened between those four lines. From Caitlin Clark's unprecedented, record-breaking 20 assists that permanently shattered the single-game league record to Aaliyah Boston's absolute unyielding dominance in the painted area against a veteran, championship pedigree front court, the cold hard statistics do absolutely all of the talking for us today. The Indiana Fever didn't just win a regular season basketball game, they systematically, surgically exposed the Las Vegas Aces' glaring inability to handle a young ascending team forcefully and unapologetically taking their crown on national television in front of millions of viewers. Let's dive deep into the most comprehensive, analytical, and genuinely gleeful post-game excuse demolition on the entire internet. So drop a comment below with your specific take on the Aces' unprecedented meltdown. Tell us exactly which staggering stat surprised you the most during this blowout, and please don't forget to hit that subscribe button, turn on your bell notifications, and join our rapidly growing community for more rigorous, deep-dive basketball analysis and our weekly post-game autopsies. 0 Tiaur, the Promise Plus verdict open. 0 vote 45, the degree of difficulty context. 2 cows, the fair hearing of Vegas's wild excuses. 3:30, the stat sheet demolition. 5:30, the excuse inversion, identifying who was actually physical. 7, the margin, math explaining why. Schedule complaining fails. 8:30, naming names in the player-by-player celebration. 11, the locker room. Contrast, 13:30, the identity statement, proving receipts over excuses. Thumbnail prompt. 1 is a split-screen composition operating on the principle of maximum visual contrast, where the left side, taking up exactly half the frame, shows a visibly frustrated Aja Wilson at the post-game press conference podium, aggressively rubbing her temples with her eyes closed, in mid-complaint under harsh, unflattering fluorescent media lighting, while the right side, bathed in warm, cinematic arena lighting, shows Caitlin Clark smiling joyfully while perfectly executing a no-look behind-the-back pass in transition, tied together by a huge, bold, three-dimensional text overlay spanning across the middle reading 8 on 5 on the left side and 20 assists on the right, with the color grading leaning heavily into Aces black, silver, and dull gray on the left to emphasize the gloomy mood, while the right side bursts with vibrant fever navy, bright red, and gold, disguising this analytical takedown as a joyous celebration of brilliant basketball. Thumbnail prompt 2 is an extreme, hyper-detailed close-up of the official WNBA box score printed on a physical sheet of paper. clearly and undeniably showing the Indiana Fever's staggering 54% field goal shooting right next to the Las Vegas Aces' dismal 38% shooting. But the amazing twist is that the paper is being held by a laughing, clearly highly amused Aaliyah Boston, whose face is just visible in the background with a shallow depth of field, her eyes sparkling with immense competitive joy, while a vibrant, high-contrast neon text overlay at the very top of the image reads, "The stats already won," with the lighting emphasizing the texture of the paper and the sheer, undeniable reality of the printed numbers, making the viewer instantly understand that absolutely no spoken excuse can ever alter the mathematical facts presented on the physical page. Thumbnail Prompt 3 is a highly dynamic split-screen layout designed to specifically highlight the massive emotional disparity between the two sidelines, featuring Aces head coach Becky Hammon on the left side looking furiously angry, her arms aggressively crossed tightly over her chest, shouting angrily towards a referee who is deliberately left entirely out of the frame to make her look like she's just blindly yelling at a brick wall, while the right side features Fever guard Kelsey Mitchell in the immediate euphoric aftermath of sinking a massive dagger three-pointer, celebrating fiercely by pointing 3 fingers to her head, while looking directly into the roaring, sold-out home crowd, all anchored by a massive, glowing neon text overlay floating dead center in the middle of the frame that reads "Excuses versus Receipts," with excuses typed in a harsh, cautionary yellow and receipts glowing in a validating, triumphant green. Thumbnail Prompt 4 is a wide, sweeping, majestic shot of the Gainbridge Fieldhouse Jumbotron scoreboard, dominating the entire top third of the frame, clearly and undeniably displaying the final humiliating score of Indiana 104, Las Vegas 80, with the bright red game clock reading exactly 0 hours, while in the immediate foreground, slightly out of focus to deliberately draw the viewer's eye up to the background scoreboard, an official press conference microphone with the Las Vegas Aces team logo prominently displayed on its flag stands completely abandoned on an empty wooden podium, symbolizing a defeated team that has simply run out of valid things to say to the media, tied together by bold, aggressive yellow text with a heavy black drop shadow sitting across the center of the thumbnail reading the excuse "Demolition," conveying the silent, devastating aftermath of a blowout where the final score speaks far louder than any post-game rationalization ever could. Thumbnail Prompt 5 is a powerful, heroic, low-angle shot of Caitlin Clark standing dead center at half-court, with her hands casually resting on her hips, her posture completely relaxed and deeply confident, looking up slightly at the arena jumbotron with a knowing smirk, while faded directly into the dark, shadowy background behind her, almost like ghostly text haunting the arena itself, are the exact quotes, "We were exhausted, and the whistle was one-sided, and they got every 50-50 ball," punctuated by a thick, aggressive red arrow pointing directly from the floating text down to Clark, accompanied by a bold, capitalized text overlay reading, "The real reason they lost," communicating clearly that despite all the noise, the complaints, and the endless shifting of blame, the singular, undeniable force responsible for the blowout is standing right there in the middle of the basketball floor. The Las Vegas Aces and their head coach Becky Hammon got on the post-game podium after losing by a staggering, incomprehensible 24 points and boldly declared to the national media that the Indiana Fever won because the officiating whistle was entirely one-sided. The physicality was completely unchecked by the referees, and their veteran players' legs were simply unimaginably heavy from the league's grueling, unforgiving travel schedule. Not because Caitlin Clark just orchestrated an absolute, undeniable masterclass in elite point guard play to the tune of 28 points and a record-breaking 20 assists that completely, thoroughly, and systematically dismantled their highly complex defensive schemes from the opening tip to the final buzzer. Not because Aaliyah Boston secured 14 hard-fought rebounds and utterly dominated the painted area against a veteran, championship pedigree front court that prides itself on interior intimidation. Not because the Indiana Fever collectively shot an unbelievable, blistering 54% from the floor while methodically and surgically picking apart the defending champions possession after possession, quarter after quarter, without ever letting their foot off the gas pedal. But because of the referees and the calendar, we are going to meticulously go through every single excuse the Las Vegas Aces and their frustrated spokespeople gave one by one, and line it up directly against what actually, factually happened on the hardwood for 40 minutes of regulation basketball. It's not close in a single measurable statistical category. And we'll break down exactly why the defending back-to-back champions are just desperately grasping at thin straws, throwing incredibly uncharacteristic temper tantrums, and actively avoiding any semblance of personal accountability after the Indiana Fever completely, totally, and undeniably obliterated them on national television in one of the most shocking margins of victory of the entire season. Heading into this highly anticipated primetime television matchup, Caitlin Clark had been dealing with the most aggressive, excessively physical, borderline violent, defensive game plans in the modern history of the professional league, facing relentless traps, aggressive double teams, and suffocating full-court face guards from the very moment she crossed the timeline all season long. And anyone who watched the grueling, brutal 3 games in 5 nights stretch the Indiana Fever had literally just completed, prior to this matchup, knew the immense, undeniable human element at play, the sheer, bone-deep exhaustion, and the unprecedented, suffocating psychological pressure this young core has been pushing through under a massive media microscope that absolutely no other franchise has ever experienced in the entire history of the sport of basketball. Heading into Tuesday night against the defending champion Aces, they were facing a well-rested, highly experienced super team that had just spent the last 48 hours publicly talking to the media about exactly how they were going to welcome the young rookie phenom to the harsh reality of playoff-level, championship-caliber physicality, basically promising a defensive masterclass that would humble the rising stars, which means for the absolute entirety of this basketball game, the Indiana Fever's 22-year-old point guard was operating under the intense, deliberate limitation of being the sole, undeniable focal point of a defensive unit designed by Becky Hammon, specifically to completely break her rhythm, aggressively shut off her water, forcefully force the ball out of her hands, and physically intimidate her off her preferred sweet spots on the floor. So how on earth does a young team achieve a massive 24-point blowout victory with its absolute best player and primary ball handler operating under a specifically targeted defensive limitation deliberately designed by a championship coach to completely erase her statistical impact from the basketball game? Aja Wilson, the reigning Finals MVP, the presumed league MVP, and the most prominent voice of the entire Las Vegas franchise, stood at the podium under the bright, unforgiving media lights after a humiliating 104-80 blowout loss, and explicitly, verbatim said, "We can't win when it feels like it's 8-on-5 out there. They got every 50-50 ball. And we were just running in deep mud from the opening tip because of this brutal schedule. Not, we fundamentally failed to rotate on the weak side of the floor and repeatedly allowed their role players to shoot 46% from deep because we were lazy on our closeouts. Not, we completely failed to contain the high pick-and-roll action and let a first-year point guard totally manipulate our drop coverage and our blitzes for 4 straight quarters without making a single viable schematic adjustment. She literally said it was 8 on 5. So what does that actually practically mean in reality when we break down the language of a sore loser? Is she seriously suggesting that 3 professional WNBA referees maliciously conspired in the back room and just arbitrarily decided to illegally hand 24 free points to the Indiana Fever for absolutely no reason whatsoever, other than sheer bias? Because that is an extraordinary, remarkable, and frankly incredibly wild thing to say out loud to a room full of reporters after your veteran team got completely outworked, out-hustled, out-rebounded, and flat-out embarrassed in every single measurable category on the printed stat sheet from top to bottom. Head coach Becky Hammon immediately backed her star player up too, aggressively complaining that the league's scheduling matrix put them at a severe, unfair competitive disadvantage, completely ignoring that Indiana had just played essentially the same density of games, and complaining that the officials just arbitrarily decided to swallow their whistles whenever the Aces guards drove the lane, effectively punishing them for playing their normal, supposedly superior brand of basketball. So what does the objective, unfeeling, entirely neutral stat sheet actually show when we strip away the emotional rhetoric and the post-game crying? The Indiana Fever shot an absolutely blistering 54% from the floor overall, consistently generating incredibly high-quality, wide-open looks directly out of their beautiful pick-and-roll actions, while the Las Vegas Aces shot a dismal, highly disjointed 38%, constantly being forced into settling for heavily contested, late shot clock, incredibly low percentage mid-range jumpers because they could not penetrate the Fever's interior defense. The Fever won the crucial, game-defining points in the paint battle by an absolutely astonishing 48-26 margin, completely overwhelming the Aces' interior defense and rendering their elite rim protectors entirely useless. The Fever generated an incredible 32 total assists on exactly 40 made field goals, representing a staggering, beautiful, historically significant display of unselfish, connective, team-oriented basketball that you usually only see in coaching clinics. That is not a whistle discrepancy. That is not a refereeing conspiracy, and that is absolutely not the officials gifting a massive win to a young, popular team. That is an absolute clinic in elite shot creation.